Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also. Video presentation, but, unfortunately, yes, this rhetoric, and that's all there is. There's no real arguments or counter arguments. So, I did get a response, but it's one of the same, whatever you want to call them, uh, cranks. Yeah, that's what they are, trolls. They're not going to bother making physics arguments. So these are simple no questions. I mean, there really isn't a yes option. But it'd be nice if somebody did counter one of them with some sort of yes, okay? But that's not what's going to take place. They're just going to sit there and keep claiming they have an experiment that demonstrates that's a credible piece of evidence. And of course, there isn't any. All right. So I'm just going to copy paste my comments over here. Well, I'm just going to, block you, because this is bullshit. I mean, this is just a litany of silly, stupid, wasted time insults, glorifying your cranky morons who keep making flawed experiments, and you're going to sit there and say this is the way science should be, and it's the worst possible science. It's flat earth science. It's a bunch of cranks. It's truther science, okay? A bunch of people claiming there was bombs on the plane and all kinds of bullshit. And that's all it is. People trying to contrive evidence so they can, build a conspiracy theory. And that's it. All right. Look at all the experiments that science has done over the last 300 years that have been explained away by draft science. Well, I'm just saying some of them are explain awayable. So again, denting clay is explain awayable. Is just pretty fucking dumb science. You have to be dumb to fall for it. However, for conventional science, it was more than enough to establish. Well, that's exactly the point. They don't need anything, and then they'll pervert everything. So again, I've made all these arguments before, right? I mean, they say they have an electron double slit experiment where there's no slits. They're just shooting electrons at a crystal, a solid crystal. I mean, it's all kinds of Stern Gerlach. All of a sudden, they're doing the magnetic moment of electrons when they're silver atoms that they're testing. I mean, this is the Eddington experiment. I mean, there's so much bullshit. Lies. Just outlandish lies, really. Enough to establish important distinction between momentum and kinetic energy. So again, and so he's just giving us this vague notion that somehow they believe the pile of evidence. There's no pile of evidence. They haven't dropped 1 pound 4 feet, and 4 pounds 1 foot and 1 pound 4 feet. They haven't done any experiments. They haven't put things on a lever, for Christ's sakes. This is just such a lie. Okay, and those experiments is all that, is all that you ever will get. Okay, so that's amazing. So he's saying it's closed. There's no other experiments? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Why would it be all there's ever going to do? I mean, science should be tested. The fact that it hasn't been is just a fact. So you're saying that they'll never do the Eddington experiment from space. It's just a rule that we can't do it from space because we say so, even though it gets easier and easier to do every fucking year. Yeah, oh, okay. Fuck you. Diaz proposed a whole branch of scientific experiments, and yes, science don't do these specific experiments, right, because they get to the truth. So they're not going to do the experiments to get to the truth. They're just going to keep contriving experiments that deceive, and that's the whole point. You can come up with hundreds of specific experiments which have never been performed and complain that nobody has done them. Well, that's not what's happening. There's not hundreds in the first place. And, you could probably get away with a dozen experiments and tie up most of the loose ends. So fuck you again. You always can invent something that hasn't been done and complain about it. So that's not what's taking place. They're very specific, getting to the very point. Crash things into each other. 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour, see what happens, into brick walls. You could at least be glad and thankful that there are a branch of amateurs. No, why would I be grateful for people who are just haters trying to prove me wrong? That's not science, you fucking moron. So to defend that, okay, that you need advocates for an outcome doing the experiments. That's the way science should be, is advocates for an outcome should do the experiments. That's called bias, retard, and it's not a good thing. But they're willing to do the requested experiments by DS, even willing to change their setups based on critique. Well, they're not willing to set... Look, where did Dispar redo the rubber band experiment? Where did he redo the milk carton experiment? Right? So, no, they ignore the critique and just move on to some other contrivance. They find some other way to cheat. Where is... it's almost... I guess it's over a month now, right? You know, that Valerie Rousseau was supposed to do the 4 rubber band experiment with the air track. Still haven't seen it, have we? That's where an experiment is on the line. He's a physicist. He has a doctorate. He has a degree to put in jeopardy. Okay, so let him go ahead and contrive the results, because frankly, you know, you're going to be proven wrong in the history. And I'm just saying, because it doesn't happen, all right? You think it happens. 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. You think that happens somewhere. Well, if it happens somewhere, you'd be able to produce evidence of it. And the simple truth is, it'll never happen your way. Electric motors will never produce these silly results. You're just an idiot defending nonsense. Okay, and you're going to get yours eventually. I mean, you're going to be the one proven to be exactly that, an idiot defending nonsense. Alright, without them there would be nothing but a list of typical experiments being done. Typically what? Deceptive. Yeah, okay. Which again have all been explained away by Gary. Not all have been explained away, and frankly there's a bunch of experiments that I keep pointing out that you haven't debunked at all. You haven't gone anywhere near. So I always have to put it back on the screen, right? So I have to keep putting this back on the screen. There you go. Where's your explanation? Completely defeats your physics theory, that simple experiment. So go ahead, explain it away. Tell us why that experiment's a piece of shit. Go ahead, explain it, fucker. Oh, God, you're such hypocrites. Anyway. However, there are good reasons to counter all the excuses, because Gary is so wrong about so many basic things. So I'm so right, and you're going to be proven wrong. And one of the proofs right now, existing right now, is that you can't answer any of my claims. You can't produce any credible evidence. Okay. And that's the problem. We always have to start over explaining and re-explaining the very basics, such as acceleration and the difference between a scalar vector. Yeah, well, there's no point in explaining the difference between hobgoblin and chicken soup. Okay, one is real and one is bullshit. So I don't. You're just. I'll give you a clue. You're gonna waste your time because a fucking scalar is nonsense. It doesn't have any meaning. It's not even a rational concept in any way whatsoever. You don't even explain it. It's just like saying the word magic energy. What the fuck is a scalar energy? You still haven't answered the question. What the fuck is it? How the fuck does something have scalar momentum or scalar energy? Whatever it is, hidden powers. But Gary gets pissed and claims he debunked it. Well, I'm saying though, the debunk is simply asking you to explain it, which you can't. So I can debunk a lot of religion by just saying, well, can you explain that? You know. Okay, but no, he keeps misrepresenting everything a single day. Okay, liar. We claim he fundamentally misunderstands a lot. Well, so you can claim anything you want, but you're just wasting time with this crap. So instead of a physics argument, what do we get? Another diatribe about how I'm a flawed character. What a fucking waste of time. So you can't make the counter arguments on the subject. All you can do is this waste of time character assassination nonsense, you piece of garbage, you hides. You fucking goddamn coward hiding behind rocks throwing shit. But he claims the same about us. There's nothing to claim about you because you don't make yourself vulnerable. Okay, so there is no progress at all in the debate. Yeah, it's a waste of fucking goddamn time to type all this shit. Is there any of this shit in my post? No. There's just simple accusations, very simple one-sentence goddamn statements. Can you possibly make one-sentence statements somewhere? The only result is Gary becomes more and more fuck you, frustrated, starts shout. Who cares? Who the fuck cares about all this nonsense? So again, you're the ones who can't make an argument. Alright, this is pure emotion. No, it's a pure... Yes, there should be a reaction to people who just waste people's time. You couldn't type this diatribe to Professor Lewin If you disagree with Professor Lewin and typed all of this crap at him, he would say, what the fuck? Who the fuck are you? Why the fuck do you have the authority to make up this fucking fake narrative about my goddamn life, you stupid piece of shit? God damn it. For years you have been begging for the proposed experiment results. Nobody does them right. It's always, well, I'm just saying it's obvious flaws, for fuck's sake. Nails aren't even hammered in straight. Nothing is lined up. It's all dirty film from the goddamn fucking upside down. It's all crap. Always cheated, always garbage. I'm just saying, I've absolutely proven, 20-30% of the experiments to be absolutely, fundamentally impossible to be a fair test. All right, and then the other, another 40% have a bunch of little defects, for which I can't prove any one of them is decisive, but they're there. Again, it's just okay with this asshole that a professor, a physics professor, does an experiment, has his computer software go all wacky, okay, and he claims that's fine. I just did it one time, and it did this crazy, wacky tracing, and that's a perfectly valid experiment. Nobody could get away with that, and you know it. Nobody on this earth could challenge a physics concept with an experiment that shabby. And you goddamn know it. So you're just a duplicitous, lying hypocrite to talk this shit at me. All right. Whether it's done by professors such as Professor Lewin, Valerie Rousseau. So again, the example, he did an 8-second video. Do you think it really debunked anything I've said? You fucking lying sack of shit. God damn, you're so blocked here. Are many science teachers demonstrating elastic collisions, and I showed, yes. So you got your names, I got my names, right? So we know that the Bruce Yearney videos look really bad for your side, okay? So and I can rub that one in your face all day long. So what's the point, Michael Falwell, mindless? These are all people who hate my guts and want nothing to do with making real physics arguments. They don't give a shit about the truth, you liar. Okay. You've had hundreds of counter arguments. Oh, bullshit, liar. So post a link to what you think the best fucking argument they've presented is. I mean, you don't even remember when Brozo got results and he misunderstood his own results and was claiming victory when the result was right in between, exactly in between the two choices. That's your credible science? Fuck you. Alright, explained and showed to you a little... Oh, fuck you, baby steps. You haven't... You people are so fucking full of shit. And you keep begging and begging. No, I'm not begging them, okay? I'm begging you to show me something science produced. Not these 5 morons, these 5 trolls. Show me something produced by actual fucking physics, you fucking piece of shit. And you can't do it. And that's what those questions asked. Is there any evidence produced by real physics demonstrating any of these things they claim to be true? And there isn't, you little lying shit. Alright, what do you expect in the future? I'm saying the future, eventually these experiments will get done. As soon as enough people make noise and say, yeah, I want to see the proof. I want to see the Eddington experiment done again from space, since there's 400 times better resolution and you can get a real result, a real picture of it. Yeah, I want to see that. There's a lot of people, I think, who do want to see the truth. They don't want to have to just believe it on faith. They want to see the picture. I mean, if you're a religious person, you'd love to see the picture of Jesus walking on the water. You'd love to see it. Obviously, you will continue denying everything that proves you wrong. Well, whatever that even means. I'm going to deny the impossible. So, yes, when somebody says they have contrived the impossible, I'm going to say, yeah, sure. Let's go do some detective work. And every time you do that detective work, you will find the defects. So what's the point of us all, of all this begging? So liar, 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 liar. I want to see real physics, okay? I want to see some kind of experiment that looks like it has some hope of being credible. Not this fucking let's tie a donut on a Matchbox car. Fuck you if you think that's real science, you liar. Alright, again, instead of, so this, just paragraph after paragraph of a waste of time. Years end, nobody, blah, 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 blah. So this is just all a waste of time. What's this collecting money? What's this bullshit? Complaining for years that nobody does the experiments, that all experiments are crap. You could have spent the time getting off your ass. I guess it's off. He says of your ass. Going to university. So again, I'm not going to explain my life circumstances, but that's just not a possibility. And we know that it wouldn't matter. I mean, universities aren't going to let me have their toys. Okay, asking if you do, it's just idiotic. They're not going to let me prove them wrong. Stating a GoFundMe for your supporters. I've already offered money for people to do the experiment. Do I have enough of an audience to get anybody to do it? No. I've solicited it from experimentalists. I've offered them overtly. I just stated, could you do these experiments and I'll pay for it and blah, blah, blah. And they're not willing. So what's the point? Collecting money to buy good equipment. I'm not going to do that. The equipment already exists. Valerie Rousseau has it all. Why isn't he doing all these experiments? There's a ton of experiments you could do with an air track. Do they do any of them? No, they just do the same fucking experiment over and over and over again. That's it. That's the only experiment they're ever going to do. They don't even measure how many times a thing can bounce back and forth. They don't do it. Nothing. Nothing. All right. Renting a space, whatever all this is. Yeah, right. I'm going to collect enough money for all of this crap. And I'm going to be an experimentalist. Okay, so the theoretical physicists are now supposed to be experimentalist physicists. Okay, I mean, what a pile of shit. It's not my fucking job. I don't want the job. I'm not interested in the job. All right, it's just not what I want to do with my time here on Earth. Okay, is do the whatever grunt work, of engineering and filing and doing this and doing that. I don't want all that job. I've done that my whole life. I'm a little bit sick of it, frankly. Fixing things. Anyway, changing hundreds and hundreds of variables, etc. You should be doing all of it because you know how to the experiments correctly. Only you know. So I'm just saying, it's not only me. But isn't it an embarrassment to physics that they can't figure out that putting a point on an arrow does not make it have more energy? The fact that physicists can't figure that out, in the case of the Dishonest clay fiasco, is pretty pitiful. Know all the flaws and everybody else does it wrong. Well, it's just an absolute fact. Some of these flaws are pretty obvious, right? So you're telling me only I have the knowledge that the computer software shouldn't be making squiggly lines? Only I can figure that out? What a ridiculous statement. Okay, Disbar's experiment was so sloppy. You could see the block off the ground. You could see the triangle fucking card. The whole thing didn't make any sense at all. Why would any idiot do it that way? It was crazy stupid. And you're telling me you need to be a brilliant person to be able to see those defects? No, you just don't want to see them. If I did an experiment that looked that shitty, you'd be mocking it all for the rest of your life. So just you're such liars and hypocrites. All right, but because you are not going to do that, so go cry some more, loser. Oh, this sounds like the other asshole. This sounds like this must be Valerie's other sock account. I don't think Valerie can type this much though. So go cry some more, loser. So this is the attitude. And again, what would they do? They couldn't accept the Mythbusters experiment, right? So Brozo and the whole gang got all together and tried to come up with reasons why the Mythbusters did this wrong and they did that wrong and they did this wrong. So again, your hypocrisy is just glaring. They did do some things wrong. It was a fact. And so that's the whole good process, is to challenge experiments. But frankly, the Mythbusters experiment was just a tiny bit wrong. Brozo's experiments have been gigantically wrong. He doesn't even know that, if you put the weight on the outside of a wheel or on the inside of the wheel, it's going to absorb a whole different amount of energy when you try to push it. All right, it's amazing you automatically assume they simply cheat the experiment. I don't assume they do. So again, lie some more. As stated, when I saw the Brozo experiment, I liked it. When he did the pool ball thing, even before I saw the results, I said, this is pretty good. All right, so fuck you. You know, can you counter my arguments about flawed or forced experiments? What arguments do you have? Is there an argument there? I didn't see an argument. Can you counter my arguments about flawed and forced experiments? What's your argument? Sorry, there's nothing to counter. You're saying that all their experiments are pristine, and everybody should accept that they are the greatest experimentalist scientists in the history of mankind. No, nobody has to do that, you asshole. That's my counter argument. You're a duplicitous, lying sack of shit. That's my counter argument. All right, so here's the argument. Well, there's not going to be any argument, but there's just be more rhetoric, complaining about bullshit, instead of talking about physics. So every post I attempt to talk about physics, and every single post you attempt to talk about bullshit. Alright, even though the experiments always cluster around the same results with respect to conventional science predictions. So every experiment doing exactly the same thing. So let's understand. There's no different experiments he's talking about. There's just certain experiments that, where they claim to get these consistent results. Okay, but we know they're all in the same class, and they're all marginal because of the fact that springs are unreliable, because of the fact that you can't get much past the margin of error in these experiments. Just a fact. It's always considered to be total garbage, filled with dozens of flaws. I'm just saying, it's 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast, happens every fucking day. I'm just saying, why can't you find some place where I can see that? I mean, of course, in no spectacular way have you shown how any electric motor or generator obeys this kinetic energy rule, where spin it twice as fast, you get 4 times the electricity, spin it 3 times as fast, you get 9 times. So everybody knows this doesn't happen. And where have you countered that argument? Can you counter my arguments about the fact that your experiment can't be true because you don't have any evidence of it being true in all kinds of different circumstances where it should show up if it existed? You liar. Alright, this means that flawed experiments always naturally produce results that match conventional science predictions, whatever that means. No matter how worse the flaws. I'm saying they're contrived. You're saying they got no other results but the ones they filmed and produced as videos? So you're saying that they never did any experiments where the results didn't work and they had a video that, didn't come out very well. Yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of those. We just don't get to see those. Okay. It's always coincidentally produces outcomes that match you don't think I could sit here with an experimental device and I could just wait for it to come out my way and then film that? I could film all of it and I just throw out all the versions where it didn't go right. Isn't that pretty simple to do, or easy to do, you liar? Oh yes, very easy to do. You have been shown many experiments where the setup has been changed multiple times. So see, this keeps talking. And why was it changed? Because they conceded, oh yeah, well, we really should be using quick releases, and yeah, we really shouldn't be lifting objects off the ground, and yes, we really should have these consistent spring lengths. I mean, yes, springs shouldn't be molded into each other. I mean, they shouldn't be pushed right into each other so the coils are hitting each other. I mean, those are pretty dramatic flaws, asshole. Okay, yeah, the outcomes cluster the same result. So again, so this is just a regurgitation of the same argument you're going to make over and over again. That, oh, well, every time they contrive an experiment, the results come out how they contrive them. And we don't get to see the other experiment, right? So we have the perfect example of Ian Gosling. When the results didn't come out his way, he didn't publish the experiment. So he published everything until, whoops, they're not coming out my way. Then he made a video just saying, hey guys, it didn't come out right, so what do we do? He did, instead of publishing the experiment. And again, as I pointed out, Dispar has had tons of experiments where you point out the flaw, okay, he accepts the existence of the flaw and never redoes the experiment. Why doesn't he redo it? Well, what is the logic behind behind a forced experiment? When an experiment is forced, the setup has been deliberately manipulated and such, so indeed the results will come out a certain desired way. Yeah, kind of like smearing clay on things. However, this are in physicist Michael's case, just putting a blob of clay on an elastic collision. So you're supposed to have an elastic collision. You put a blob of clay on the object. Yeah, that's really fair. That's not a contrivance. No. Okay. However, this means that initially it actually came out your way, and as soon as they noticed it comes out your way, they hide those results and start to manipulate the setup to change the results. Well, I'm sure that's happened. So, yeah, I mean, Ian Gosling's a perfect example. Hide the results, try to figure out how to force it to come out their way. And that's what he did. So, if it initially came out your way, then it wasn't a flawed experiment. No, so again, where has that happened? The only experiment that I've had any interest in terms of saying, well, that's a pretty good experiment, was the lever launcher. Brozo invented it. He invented it pretty cleverly. You know, I mean, theoretically, okay, sawing the sides off of a billiard ball isn't exactly fair, because now, you know, you have taken the low rotation mass off the ball. So the only mass that's left is the higher rotation, you know, the further out. The mass further out. You cut off a bunch of mass that was close to the center. So it was a little bit unfair. No, it was well done, flawless experiment. So where did that happen? Show me one of the Brozosian experiments I said that was well done. But they forced the result to manipulate the setup, because if the results always were a cluster around the predictions, then certainly the experiment is not flawed, right? No, they always cluster because they always use the same device, like a spring, and because they don't accept that springs aren't reliable in terms of they're not going to give back the same energy regardless of how much pressure you put on them in terms of the release. So, you know, just keep lying, and fine, that's your prerogative. All right. So there are logical contradictions. Either the experiment is flawed, or they somehow magically, naturally produce results. So you're just saying basically that none of these, that all of these experiments are so undeniably perfect that nobody could critique any of them. And I'm just saying, if I produce the same quality experiments proving my argument, you'd critique them fine. And that has been done. I built an air track. I did the pendulum experiments with steel rebar, and my results don't look like their results, okay, but they're just as sloppy. They're just as they don't provide much of a truth beyond the visuals. So again, that's what you're saying we should be arguing, is a bunch of experiments that don't do anything clinical. So fuck you again. All right. Anyway, here are the list of typical experiments regardless. So why? These aren't typical in any way. So what you're supposed to do is show me experiments from real science. All right. But whatever, this drop and impact depth experiments, right? So I already have debunked those. So, I mean, it doesn't make much sense to do this crap. Galileo studied falling bodies. So I know, what is this? What does that have to do with anything? So I know I've already debunked the soft clay experiments. Just last night I showed the images of the dents, and you could see that the dent for the first drop was this tiny little dent, so he barely dented the clay. There's no penetration involved at all in those experiments. Not even all up to halfway, the ball going in halfway. I mean, it's just denting the surface. So, I mean, already done. I've been there, done this for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. I've been debunking that experiment. So just ignore my arguments and pretend I haven't addressed them when I did. So are you being honest? Do you know that I haven't already debunked that experiment hundreds of times in my videos? Are you aware of that fact? And then you posted this shit anyway? So are you being honest to the experiments? Are you being honest to the arguments? No. You're being dishonest right in front of everybody. So very good. Prove my point. Collision experiments. So whatever this is, steel balls, pendulum balls, carts, led to destruction between momentum, distinction between momentum, MV, and vis visa. So I don't know where are these important contributors So where did Leibniz contribute any experimental evidence? No, none. Chardonnay is the dented clay, so no good again. And then dropping things in a pile of dust, in salt or sand. And then she measured just how far something went. So the only thing she measured was which velocity shot something the furthest. So if you can't talk about bogus, I mean, that's just ridiculously bogus. Okay, and Joule did not in any way prove anything regarding that disrupts anything I'm saying. Okay, in the sense that, yes, him and Lord Kelvin believed in mv squared, but they didn't do any experiments that proved it. So again, just keep lying. All right, ballistic pendulum experiment. So I know I've owned that subject. So you're just going to lie, to claim that that experiment does anything but prove your theory to be absolute rubbish. So just lie. So Benjamin time, who cares? Procedure doesn't matter. Fire projectile into wooden block. Well, we know a wooden block is far from ideal. Measure swing height. Use gravitational potential energy to compute projectile energy. And we know every fucking one of those experiments demonstrates a huge loss, 99.94%. So I'm sure you've heard me talk right to the Professor Lewin experiment. I play Professor Lewin saying the words, 99.94% of the kinetic energy is lost. So how does that fucking experiment prove your theory? Oh, that's right, it doesn't. It indicates that it's wrong as fuck. That's what it indicates. And the fact that they don't want to put a thermometer in that pendulum just illustrates the fact that, that's the underdone part. Are you going to argue it's not underdone for them to say there's 2,000 joules of heat in there? Did they show any of that? No. And again, it requires that, somebody logical, I could explain to you, what the experiment requires is that you made heat with your momentum and then kept all of your momentum. So somehow you could make thousands of joules of heat but keep all of your momentum. Yeah, you can't do that. So what a liar. Work energy experiments, lifting weights and moving objects. So what fucking, pulleys blow you right out of the water. So what objects in motion to lift weights via pulleys. So how do pulleys validate mv squared? They're a decisive victory for momentum. So these are just absolute lies here. Work done against gravity matched. No, it didn't. You're just lying. There's no hope. You have no hope. So again, this lie. Just keep lying. I mean, that's just an overt lie. You lose. On levers and pulleys, you lose decisively. Oh, what a liar. Paddle wheel experiments. So this isn't paddle wheel experiment. So he calls it a paddle wheel experiment like it's a rotating wheel outside in a river. And so there's nothing in what James Joule performed that doesn't do anything but prove that if you drop something slower in gravity, it will collect more energy. And that's all is proven, okay? He didn't test anything in any kind of fair manner. He dropped weights in gravity, and that's it. He didn't use any other mechanical input energy. He didn't use a horse or a bowling ball or any other rolling or moving object. So bullshit that proves anything. All right. Well, you're making a good argument here in the sense you're providing me with a perfect opportunity to explain what a lie, what a lie, what a lie, what a lie, what a lie. So far, they're all lies to claim I haven't thoroughly debunked all of this shit, okay, years ago. Moving objects, compressed spring using Hooke's law. So Hooke's law, decisive again. Hooke's law says twice the force, twice the motion. Okay, so again, just keep lying. Rolling and sliding experiments, a decisive win for my side again. So you have no hope here, idiot. So just more lying. Objects rolling down inclines doesn't prove a damn thing. Compare speeds at the bottom. Yeah, and how does it prove your theory? It doesn't prove any such thing. Stopping distance equals v squared. Says you. Where was that proven? So again, that's the big lie, that they've done these experiments. They never done these experiments. They just tell us the truth. Everyone, I mean, look, the guy spent the time to sit there and ask. He actually asked these people, where do you base your claims on? Okay, at one of these institutes. And they said, no, we don't have any experimental data. We just calculated the results. So fuck you, you liar. All right, penetration and crater experiments. So what is this? What, modern variance? Modern variances by who? And for what reason? It's already been done. You know, projectiles into sand. There he is. That's the silly de Chardonnay experiment. So again, just more crap. Meteor crater scaling studies. Well, I mean, I don't know. Again, this is just garbage in, garbage out. You say it had 10 million joules, and then you say it had 10 million joules. I mean, you don't have any evidence. So that's just as silly as me putting gigantic things in front of an explosion and say it has 10 joules, and then I put small things in front of it and I say it has 10,000 joules. So that's just lie physics. All right, so yeah, won't even bother, liar. None of that science proves anything. High-speed photography. So where do you have this? You know, amazing. Strobing. Yes, modern high-speed camera. So where's any of that? So there's no link. Where's the link to the video using high-speed camera to prove kinetic energy? Where is that video, fucker? All right, air track, low fission carts. Well, we know the fudgeability there, so we'll just move on. Atomic and molecular evidence, lie some more. So we know there's nothing in there that you're going to prove anything called an MV squared. So waste of time. Particle accelerator, lie some more. Astrophysical, there's no such thing. Okay. Computational statistical confirmation and more horseshit. So what a pile of lies that was. So all this big text, all of this bold, you know, all of this editing to just create a fucking litany of non-links to non-evidence. This is all you'll ever get from conventional science, but as always, so what? You know, I don't know why he says this was all you'll ever get. So you're just going to say all the physicists will remain hiding liars forever. Oh, okay. I mean, literally, it's just so anti-scientific not to redo the Eddington experiment from space. There's just no reason not to do it. It's the cheapest experiment science could almost do from space. It's so easy. So what person who believes in science, repeating experiments, pursuing testing, always testing, what person who believes in that theory that you should always be testing your theories would say, don't bother? Yeah, no good scientist would say, don't bother. All right, literally everything that is presented to you, Gary, will be denied and explained away. There was nothing presented here, obviously. And clearly you're just implied that there's some sort of pile of evidence that there isn't. Okay, so you just lied gratuitously. You're a gratuitous liar. All right, no matter what point you are wanting evidence, if it's automatically deny everything that proves you wrong. So where? So I denied everything that proves me wrong. There's nothing listed here. There's no link to a single fucking experiment, okay, that in any way proves me wrong. So he couldn't link to one credible scientific experiment. This whole pile of shit. All right, so I say my win there. Okay, so then he had to add this, whatever this crap is. So he couldn't just edit his post and add this little paragraph. If Gary were just a normal, respectful person, oh, fuck you. You don't even know what the word respect means. He wouldn't have gotten the chance to engage in a lot of more debates for long periods of time. No, there's no point. Again, where's the respect? Show me the respect that all of these people have for like flat earthers or some other opposing opinion. That's all they do. Professor Lewin immediately called Electric Boom a flat earther. Because he was critical. So all you have to do is criticize them, and you're immediately defined as an enemy, and you will be attacked. So fuck you and your lies. He had a chance to attract hundreds of open-minded people willing to keep discussion and very topics addressed. There's no sign of that. I don't know where at fucking Wikipedia did I do anything antagonistic. Okay, all I did was suggest that it's not exactly true that this experiment or that experiment proves anything. And that's all I did. So you're just such a liar. Where on this platform did I commit the atrocities, you fucking liar? I didn't post videos of me ranting. I didn't post comments calling people fuck shits and everything else. So what the fuck are you talking about, you fucking lying sack of shit? I create the animosity? No way, fucker. And as long as you stay respectful, where do you do that? Where are the people on your side staying respectful, you lying sack of shit? God damn. I mean, it's just incredible that you can type this lie. Let's see, you can nice long debates. I don't want nice long debates. What I want is evidence. And you can't produce it. And that's what the post proves. How Gary is an extremely rude and obnoxious person with rotten personality. I'd say the same about you, you fucking piece of weaselly hide behind rocks and throw slime, piece of goddamn fucking cowardly shit. Alright. Obviously, almost nobody wants to deal with him anymore. I don't think anybody could deal with you, you little putz. You little fucking pus-covered piece of septic human. You piece of human garbage. You weasel. Okay, enough of that. Yeah. If I need to do more, I'll come back later. All right, back. So I might as well do this real quick again. In space, let's do the experiment in space. Have an object that's 100 times heavier. You're going to hit it with a projectile that you launch with a device that always launches with exactly the same energy. So you have an MV going in of a small projectile. It hits and sticks, Velcro, whatever. And the entire mass itself moves with a velocity. It's going to go, a unit of velocity per impact. And the fact is, I hit it with one object, it's going to go 1v. I hit it with two objects, it's going to go 2v. And there won't be any sign that it took 3 or 4 or, 4 times the energy to go twice as fast and 9 times the little balls to go 3 times as fast. It won't take 4 balls to go twice as fast. It won't take 9 balls to go 3 times as fast. So it decisively proves this to be a pile of shit, okay? It doesn't take 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast. It's provable in space, absolutely, and it's provable on the ground. I'm just saying, because really air drag on the ground doesn't get significant until you're going really fast and you have a really badly shaped object. So unless, you're having a flat sail that you're pushing or something, a very unaerodynamic object, aerodynamic drag will not quadratically increase and destroy your velocity. It really doesn't happen until you start going very fast. So these are all their big lies. So let's just point out, those are the facts, They ignore the facts and propagandize the lies. So this is a response on their board. And so he says, answers to mush, one of draft science favorites insults to opposing arguments. So I don't know, was the word mush in it somewhere? But anyway, that DS wants answered. I asked 9 questions that are reasonable to state. That there's no experimental evidence. There's no experimental evidence. There's no experimental evidence. And your response is not going to be experimental evidence. So that's the truth. So you're going to lie. You're not going to concede the point that you don't have any. All right. Is there any physical experimental evidence demonstrating it takes 25 times the fuel to move something 5 times as fast? So the answer is a decided no. There's no evidence. And instead of conceding that, he's just going to lie. Okay. The underlying physics has been experimentally verified over and over. So lie. Okay. Drag force scale. So we know this isn't about drag. We're talking about how much energy it takes to move something without drag in a vacuum. Okay, so bullshit. Okay, outside of some other opposing force you're creating. We're not talking about moving something in a swimming pool. So just lie. Okay, once those 2 things are measured, they are fuel scaling follows directly. So that's a lie. So there's nothing. I'm not going to bother going to the link because there's nothing on that NASA page that's going to tell you that aerodynamic drag consumes force proportional to mv squared, that it destroys your momentum at that rate, because it doesn't. And it only happens when you start going really fast. So when you're first falling in free fall, the wind resistance is not consuming your increases in velocity. And it's only when you get up to like 100 miles an hour that all of a sudden now you can't gain any new velocity. And that's the truth. So he's just a fucking liar. All right. Is there any physical experimental evidence demonstrating levers do not conserve momentum, but instead conserve kinetic energy? So instead of just conceding, yep, there's no lever experiment showing that they fail to conserve momentum. No, levers don't violate momentum conservation. So again, they have to if kinetic energy is real. So I'm sorry, you're a liar. Okay, that's not what Steve Mould claims anyway. So again, fuck you, liar. There is direct experimental evidence showing that levers conserve energy, not momentum. So he just contradicted himself. No, levers don't violate momentum conservation. Of course they do. They even violate the direction rules. I mean, the fact is they violate the direction rules, right? Well, so do pendulums, but I mean, I'm just saying they violate the direction rules overtly. Somehow you put this in and you get that out. I mean, fuck. Anyway, in the way they transform motion, the key is a lever is not a collision, it's a constant system, a constraint system where forces are distances trade off. So this is just a lie. So we'll go to this, but I mean, there's just no, you're not going to be able to sit there and argue that you can't have it both ways. They either conserve momentum or they conserve kinetic energy. They can't conserve both. So you're just an insane liar. I mean, I'm sorry, you're an insane liar. We're talking about changing the mass, doing a conversion, heavy thing in, light thing out. They don't conserve that, liar. I mean, amazing lie. I mean, well, let's go to the page. I mean, this is just an outrageous lie. So it's some damn page with all this cookie shit, whatever, blah, blah, blah. All right. So apparatus and material. So it's not going to be a real experiment here. Okay. Health and safety. Look at all of that. So again, so what's he going to prove here? He's not going to be able to prove that this levers don't conserve momentum. So there's nothing here. That's it, huh? Oh, that's his proof. Well, that was pretty lame, wasn't it? Yes, it was really lame. Not even close. What a pile of shit. Okay, 3. Is there any physical experimental evidence demonstrating that it takes 4 times the work to move one mass 4 units of velocity than it takes to move a 4 mass 1 unit of velocity? So that's that experiment right up there. That experiment proves that there's no problem. Light things move just as easily as they possibly could. They just say, yes, I have 1/4 of the mass, I will move 4 times faster. All right. So let's see what the answer is. Okay. No mystery here. Yes. So lie. There's experimental evidence because this is just the work energy theorem. So you're saying the theorem is evidence. There's no, the theorem is what's being questioned as having no rational supporting evidence. And it has none. For 350 years, there's no rational supporting evidence, no reasonable evidence, which has been tested in labs over the century. So look, more lies. Is there any evidence? No, he can't show any evidence. So again, just lying. When you measure the work done by a force over a distance, the change in kinetic energy always comes out as, well, so it's just a lie. It does not. So right up there is the proof. So I'm just saying the same force is applied. One object has 4 times the energy it's collected than the other object, and there's no reasoning that can explain why one object has 4 times the kinetic energy when exactly the same force is being applied. So just lie, you fucking liar. I mean, it's just, what's the point? How can you argue with people that just lie? Just overtly lie. All right, is there any physical experimental evidence demonstrating the speed of a bullet can transform more MV than the recoiling gun? What is true? What is that? What does that mean? What is true and what confuses people is that the bullet carries far more kinetic energy. So again, this is just more lying. I mean, the argument is can it transfer far more kinetic energy? I'm making the argument all it can transfer is momentum. So, how does it transfer the kinetic energy? Oh, you're conceding it can't? So the kinetic energy just can't be transferred. Is that your argument going to be? Is that your argument? Well, then it's mystical, magical, fake energy if it can't be transferred. Okay, that the gun, let's see, is that the bullet carries far more kinetic energy than the gun. Well, can it transfer it to anything? Is there any way I can ever collect the kinetic energy? I can't collect it in a ballistic pendulum, so where can I collect it? That's because the kinetic energy scales at 2v. Who cares again? V squared. So the bullet's huge velocity gives it a huge energy advantage, even though the momentums are equal. So he just ignored the subject entirely. The word transfer has got a capital letter on it. A speeding bullet can transfer more MV than the recoiling gun. I want to know is, can you actually transfer the fucking energy? So you just ignored the subject entirely. This is great. I mean, you people are really proving my point. Thank you. I mean, what evasion? Every fucking goddamn point has been evaded, decisively evaded. All right. Is there any physical evidence demonstrating light springs move fast, do more actual work, light things moving fast, inversely proportional to heavy things moving slow? So we're talking about work in terms of moving actual stuff. Okay. The light thing moving fast absolutely can do more work than the heavy thing moving slow. I want to see the evidence. So there's no evidence again, right? So a complete failure to produce any evidence. And the experimental evidence for this is about as routine and abundant as physics gets. Every work energy experiment. Where? So just show me one. Show me. Falling weights, ballistic pendulums. So none of these conserve. So I just asked, and ballistic pendulums are famous for not conserving it. So again, just more lies. All right. I mean, but it's just no point, right? I mean, it's just a lie after lie after lie. All right. That's the experimentally measured quantity to determine how much work the object can do when it hits something. So again, he's saying this is the work done, regardless of the fact that we don't have any experiment actually collecting it. so what the fuck? Ask for evidence, get nothing, no response. So instead of just conceding, no, there's no experiments. We can't collect kinetic energy. We can only talk about it. You can't even make a rocket collect it. I mean, this is the irony, right? I mean, the most basic thing in space, a rocket, and it shoots stuff out of itself, and it can't collect the kinetic energy of what it shoots. That's the experimentally measured quantity. Wait, I already did that. Okay, number 6. Is there any physical experimental evidence demonstrating you can change the octane of a fuel or the power of an explosive by pushing light things instead of heavy things? So octane rating is an empirical combustion test. Oh, what's that? And the empirical test is done how? What are they pushing? Because obviously if you push light things, you get more kinetic energy out than if you push heavy things. That's the law of your silly fable. How well the fuel resists knock. Oh, okay, this is just idiotic. I mean, this is talking about how it works in a combustion engine. This isn't any real test. Under compression, this is a measured Kroll engine test, such as blah 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 standard. So we know that their test is completely ambiguous, arbitrary. They test it arbitrarily. Okay, how much of the gas gets ignited in a combustion engine? So there's no real test here. So obviously the answer is again no. There's no good evidence for any of this shit. Alright, is there any physical evidence that an 8-pound bowling ball going 60 miles an hour knocked down any more pins than a 16-pound ball going 8 miles an hour? Okay, so again, decisive in the sense that obviously no evidence. In collisions, the kinetic energy that sets how much work can be done on the pins. So we're not talking about deformation, all this bullshit. We're talking about whether it can transfer energy other than the MV. And the simple truth is it can't. It can't transfer more than the momentum. You can't make free momentum with bowling balls or with anything else. And you're claiming you can. Not raw MV. Well, again, I'm just saying, obviously that's not true. So you have no evidence of that being true. You have no evidence that you've given any pins any more momentum. Okay, bowling physics write-ups explicitly frame pin action in terms of mass and speed, kinetic energy, and momentum transfer, not momentum alone. I'm just saying, you say so. So again, I said, is there any physical evidence that it knocks down more pins? And you just conceded no, because you didn't provide it, obviously. So obviously there is no evidence. God, they're just such liars. All right. Let's see, is there any physical evidence demonstrating that lifting something slowly against gravity is actually the same work as lifting something quickly? Okay, yes, well, that is. Well, we're not going to see that experiment. Every controlled experiment of work against gravity shows that the total work depends only on the weight and the height. So just a lie. Absolute fucking lie. No evidence shown at all. He just says so. Not the speed of the lift. Liar. Okay, complete lie. The defining equation. So again, he just keeps saying it. MGH. It's not true. It's MGT. But again, where's your evidence? Oh yeah, you have no evidence. I can show people sliding across thin ice and show that gravity is time dependent. Okay, and this comes directly from experiments where force and displacement are measured during vertical lifts. So again, it's a lie. You didn't measure any of this. There's no way to measure it because it doesn't happen, jackass. So you don't have any measurement of the fact that this isn't work. Holding a battery isn't work. You don't have any measurement demonstrating that it isn't work. Liar. Okay. Continuing. 9. Is there any physical damage collecting more energy in the second of free fall than you collected in the first? So I love this one. Because, how do you make sense out of this? So gravity gives you 1 unit of energy when you fall this far. And then when you fall this far, it gives you 3 units of energy. But it's only 1 unit of time. And you only fell that far because of the velocity you got in the first second. So how do you make in 2 timed units of gravity, 1 second, 2 seconds, how do you make 4 units of energy? Yes, free fall experiments directly show that an object gains more kinetic energy in the second than the first. Okay, so that's his theory. That somehow the constant force isn't constant. And somehow it knows that you're in your second. I have to give you more energy because you're in the second. Second's more energy. Third second's even more energy. So I'll remember that. Because I'm gravity. I'm really smart. I know I'm supposed to give you 4 times the energy, then 6 times. I'm supposed to keep increasing how much energy I give you per second. So what a lie. Because its velocity is larger. So again, and it's not 4 times larger. So there's no point in saying its velocity is larger when its velocity is only twice as large. And the rate of energy gain is proportional to the velocity. Well, says you. No evidence again. So there's no evidence provided. The whole point of the questions was to be challenged by evidence. So he linked to nothing. That's evidence. So fuck you. And then responds to his own comment again. Interesting. I expect, among other complaints, that draft science will accuse me of going off the subject. I'll accuse you of just ignoring it entirely. The plea, the request was to be demonstrated if you're going to say no, you have to explain with a piece of evidence, and you didn't do that. You didn't show any evidence. A classic deflection tactic of his, even though I have directly quoted the questions that he had posted, his lack of self-awareness means that he doesn't grasp that that is in itself off the subject. So I don't even know how that's possible. So I don't even know what that even means. But we know he didn't address any of the points with what is required, which is evidence. The points were to simply ask, is there any evidence? And instead of just answering the question honestly, no, there's no evidence, I can't show you any evidence, you were dishonest and claimed there was evidence, but didn't cite any of it. So fuck you, you piece of shit lying sack of crap. Alright. I mean, these people are just so dishonest. Ew. Ew. Alright. So, I guess that's enough of that. So I don't know why Illusionist didn't put his shit post here. You know, his 4 million paragraphs of crap. But who cares? I mean, there's no point in wasting time on these people. But we'll see. You know, I mean, once we get these people out of the way, this clutter, you know, this waste of time, these arguments that aren't on the subject, maybe somebody can show up and actually make a physics argument, you know, without all this unnecessary mush about nothing. All right, anyway, till the next time and such. Should be back. So anyway, so we do have another insanely stupid, long, frickin' crazy long comment by another one of the trolly pieces of crap shit for brains. And I just don't know whether it's worth reading all this tripe, but what the hell, he did type it all. I just don't know why he bothered. I mean, it's not like he's going to make any counter arguments to all these arguments I have made about why it's impossible. And so what's on the screen is an example of why it's impossible. You know, this simple experiment you do in space where you have something that just shoots the same size little bullet at the same exact velocity, and you have a mass and you're going to have it stick to it, you know, a mass that's 100 or 200, 500 times heavier, and it's going to give it a velocity. It's going to be a combined object, and the combined object will end up with a velocity, and it's going to be completely proportional to how many bits of force you collect, and that's it. There's not going to be any requirement to have 25 bits of force to go 5 times as fast. It's not going to happen. So anyway, that's tomorrow's post. But, you know, it just goes round and around, doing the same crap over and over again. Because they just have one set of experiments that they claim prove, and I keep pointing out how, well, these experiments have some defects. Again, you know, even the air track, it's a fair question to ask. Why are they always using springs when metal against metal works? It's elastic. It works in a Newton's cradle really well. So why are they afraid to let that happen? And it's a legitimate question, frankly. Very legitimate. Alright, so let's see. I think this is the one. Post. And then I have to move that up. Oh, I have to move it down. Alright, and I have to move it over. And I have to make it smaller. And such. So it is just an insanely long post. You know. So I'll try to just jammer through it. Here's a series of experiments that allow us to test whether the energy of a moving object is E equals mv or E equals 1/2 mv squared. Take an elastic launcher like a spring or elastic band. So this is the experiment that Valerie Rousseau did with the silly computer tracing. Then Despard did a few versions of them. Gosling did a version with the springs. It was really a mess. Pushing in a huge amount of energy for just no good reason at all. I've made the point how springs lose. The faster you're moving something, the more likely it is you're degrading the function of the spring. So the faster it has to push something, the more likely you are exceeding its functional tolerances. And it will, just as a fact, when it finishes pushing something, it's going to have energy left in it. And the faster it was pushing something, the more energy is going to be left in the spring. Now, that's just an absolute fact. They don't want to pay any attention to it. They're claiming they know it's not important, and I'm saying they have no reason to think it's unimportant. So it just doesn't go anywhere. So it's just this simple argument that they're saying a half mass hit with the same force can only go 1.4 the velocity, and that if I hit it with 3 times the mass, 3 times the energy, it can only go 1.7. This silly rule that it takes 4 times the energy to go twice as fast. Now I just showed the image right on the screen that decisively shows it doesn't take 4 times the energy to go twice as fast. Because in space, outside of any drag or friction, it's only going to take 2 units of force to go 2 units of velocity. So the subject is almost over. The experiment proves it. And again, it's up here, it's also proving it. There's no 1.4 thing happening up there. There's no 1.7 thing happening up there. Okay, the lighter object is going 4 times as fast. It's 4 times lighter, it's going 4 times as fast. No problem. No inertia is in the way. Now, have they debunked that? No. Have they said anything at all about it? No. So it's just, Alright, so I'm not going to look at these now, but, maybe I'll come back to them after we read some shit. But I'm sure it's just Dispar's video. It might be Valerie Rousseau's video in here. It might be some other. But it's just, that's all that's in here. Alright, I'm sure it won't be any Bruce Yerney videos. So I showed the Bruce Yerney rubber band videos doing exactly this experiment. They don't look anything like 1.4. So... so they just choose what evidence they're going to pay attention to, and what they don't concede is all these experiments are not nearly tight enough, okay, to be proof of anything. Alright, all these videos show same relation. Well, again, all mine show the opposite relation, so fuck you. Strongly consistent with kinetic energy theory and exactly contrary. So again, that experiment right up there is directly contrary to your predictions and perfectly consistent with mine. So you lose again. This is real evidence. No, it isn't really. Is wrong and kinetic energy correct description. So, just saying, I know it can't happen. And I know it can't happen, okay, because of this. I know it can't happen because of this, right here. It's an absolute finish, done with the subject proof. Because it just shows I don't need 9 units of force to go 3 times as fast. It finishes the subject. Okay. So then he's doing whatever this is. Draft science initial reply, whatever that means. Consider physicist Michael. So now we're going back 2 years. Video, link 4. Okay, so he's going all the way back to physicist Michael, who never finished the experiment properly. So as soon as he was going to do the decisive experiment, that is the 2 mass in, the 1 mass out, he put clay, on the mechanism. So just completely destroying any capacity for it to work. Anyway, let's see. It presents measurements of masses and velocities, a careful demonstration in other videos on his channel of the equipment used. Yeah, and again, I pointed out the little wheels on his cart. He conceded that he doesn't know, how much angular momentum is caught up in the wheels. So it's a decisive fact. If you double the velocity and you have very small metal wheels or heavy wheels, the fact is you're going to store twice as much energy as angular rotation of the wheels. That is a rotational momentum of the wheels. Huge factor when you're measuring velocity. When you're measuring linear velocity and you have metal wheels, you're not measuring the total energy that the car has absorbed. That's just an absolute fact. Okay. And he presents derivations to compare predictions and experimental outcomes. Yes, and again, without any consideration to these factors, that springs at twice the velocity, the spring is wobbling twice as much after the experiment. So another factor. So you have, not only do you have heavy little small radius wheels, you have wobbling springs. Have you eliminated those as possible distortions in the experiment? Of course you haven't. So again, you've just ignored all the counter arguments. In reply, Ref Science does not mention any of these numbers, not one. Because I mentioned right from the start, I thought the experiments were completely flawed, and the numbers, to me, came out exactly the way I would have predicted, because it shows how you're destroying momentum, and you can't do that. So in one experiment with two heavy carts, he gets a total number for momentum, and then with the two light carts, it's a different number for the momentum. And the simple argument is obviously the experiment isn't conserving momentum, which means there must be something wrong with it. Alright, yet at the same time, he repeatedly berated physicist Michael, telling him he provided nothing. Well, he didn't provide anything. In the critical experiment, like I said, he ducked it. He ducked out of the critical experiment. As a result of this, in comment exchange, physicist Michael replied, I don't remember a comment this long, but whatever. We then looked at elastic collisions between cart and measured both the momentum and the total KE of the system. You specifically said it was not possible to conserve both momentum and KE. These experiments. So again, this is just. We've already been over all of this stuff. You can't conserve both unless you're pretending that going backwards means you're creating negative momentum. And yes, I don't believe you can create negative momentum, negative anything, frankly, in terms of energy. There's no such thing as unenergy. Lastly, we looked at the cases using springs launched two carts. Yeah, and I pointed out the spring defect. And you have repeatedly claimed that the fuel needed is related to how much momentum is gained. Yeah, exactly. So the springs produce two different total momentums. That's a problem. You can't have the same fuel that produces two different momentums. You need twice the fuel to go twice as fast. No, that wasn't the conclusion. The conclusion of the experiment was that you destroyed half the momentum with the slower objects. This is equivalent to saying if you have the same amount of fuel but twice the mass, the object should be launched at half the speed. Yes, this is tested in that the compressed spring is our fuel. Right, and exactly, and your fuel doesn't work. You lose half of your fuel. We lose twice as much of your fuel when you're pushing the light things than you do when you're pushing the heavy things, in this case. I ran this experiment okay, so I don't need to go through all this, okay? I've already made my objections to this crap. Don't need to go over it again. Alright, I've tried to show these experiments as clearly as possible, showing how I set up the equipment. So this is all babble. That's not the point. The point is I argued about the stupid little carts with the little tiny radius wheels, and then I pointed out, that'll be another post where I'll just show you the two kind of carts. Mousetrap cars, big giant wheels. They're intended to be low friction and waste as little energy as possible. So why is physics using carts with little tiny wheels? Anyway, in the parts of your work that I have watched, I have not seen a single controlled experiment. Well, because I don't have a lab, jackass. A single source of data. So again, you haven't watched all the videos then, because obviously I built my own air track. That was before him. I also obviously built a lever, that an oscillating balance. And I did a couple of different experiments, banging metal things into metal things. Or a single conclusion for the outcome, a calculation for the outcome. Why would I calculate the outcome? I want to test it. I want to measure it in an experiment. I don't give a shit about a calculation. So anyway, so this is just the old babble. So again, this is 2-year-old stuff. And what was the end result? Physicist Michael said he was going to do a big Newton's cradle experiment with the 1 and the 3 mass, and he just bailed out entirely. Didn't even say anything, just disappeared from public commentary. just disappeared. So an actual experiment to draft science was actually presented and referenced. So bullshit. Before getting to draft science reply, well, I thought you were always going to do that. Note that a good faith response would look like identify which measurements are wrong, explain why, and provide. I did. I said you can't put clay in front of an elastic collision. Duh. You can't have an elastic collision if you put a blob of clay on the front of your car, jackass. So that was a pretty obvious critique. All right, so I don't know what this is. Now read what he actually said instead. Okay. And it was the kinetic energy that matched up. I'm saying that that's a flaw in your experiment, frankly, because it's wrong. And if you could test your experiment in some way, then I could show you how it's wrong, because I don't think the frame rate, whatever. So I don't think if you used the stroboscope that you could defend this, because it doesn't happen on pool tables and it doesn't happen anywhere else. Okay, so I don't know what exact experiment that was that I was talking about, but obviously stroboscopes are really important to being able to, you know, see velocity and motion. It's a really excellent tool. I mean, it makes a really pure frame rate. So it's, you know, all these experiments, I mean, frankly, it'd be a great tool to have all of them done in some way where we can get really solid frame rate data. But whatever. So he says this was the totality of my comment. Obviously not. All right. When confronted with the experiment that contradicted him, he reflexively asserts the experiment must be wrong somehow. Well, again, I'll just keep pointing to. I have counter evidence that seems overwhelmingly decisive to me. There's just no way around it. The fact is, if I can in any case produce twice the velocity with only twice the fuel, your theory is done. It's cooked. It's finished. Because that would be free energy in your world. Okay? And so we would both agree that you can't do that, asshole. Precisely because he challenged his procedures without ever reflecting or acknowledging that he misspoke. Well, frankly, the fact that he did the experiment and put a piece of clay in front of it kind of ended the validity of the whole conversation. What's the point? The most important experiment is going to reveal the truth. The brightest and the clearest is the experiment he bailed out of by putting a blob of clay on the cart. This brings me to a comment edit I made in this post. Well, I don't know what the fuck point of this is. I want to additionally address Gary's replies. And reply, Gary doesn't mind two moves. But Gary does two movies. I don't know what a movie is. The second thing draft science does to present through the experiment, trying to argue that the experiment outcome is impossible by saying that if the collision increases unsigned momentum. There you go. So exactly, if you have more momentum in the collision, there's something wrong, because you can't make free momentum. You can't make a fuel that has variable momentum. You have to show where it lost it as heat or something else. You can't just have it disappear. And the two experiments with the springs expanding, there's no way to explain why you have less momentum, except to acknowledge, it's in the wheelbases and it's in the wobbling springs. Then energy can increase in the universe, which is an absurdity. So that's a perfectly rational response by me. The problem with the second movie is that whatever unsigned momentum, I don't even know what this unsigned momentum word is. What does that even mean? Is energy is exactly what we are testing to begin with in these videos. So I never said unsigned momentum. I don't even know what that means. You cannot assume the very conclusion to argue the experiment ruling out your conclusion is invalid, because that's circular reasoning. So I don't know what this is. Fuck you. Yeah, that's what I'll say to it. So every time Gary uses a thought experiment to show the conclusion experiment leads to paradoxes, yes, that you never debunk. So I can show the thought experiment like I just did. You'll never show me how it doesn't work that way. So go ahead and explain how what I drew doesn't work, doesn't happen. So go ahead. Do that. Show some integrity and explain how I said anything wrong in that description. that you have some evidence that something else will happen besides twice the force leading to twice the velocity. He's using circular reasoning. Well, it's not circular, it's perfectly airtight is what it is. It's airtight logical reasoning. All right, at the end of the day, Gary always, let's just make sure people can hear me or something, right? Yeah, nobody's complaining. All right, at the end of the day, Gary always employs circular. So, well, this is more bullshit. It's not circular reasoning. The whole point is to have, to find the same outcome in different circumstances and to recognize variables. The fact is, you people don't want to recognize that there's any variables in the world that you haven't noticed. And there's a ton of them, frankly. You're really bad at recognizing variables. He starts with the proposition that this is an incorrect understanding of. I don't start with the knowledge that it's wrong. I have discovered that it's wrong. Yes, as soon as somebody said 25 times the fuel to go 5 times as fast, I said, fuck you, you're idiots, because I know it doesn't happen. I know I never saw anything like that in my entire life. So I know it's not true. And so I'm just going out to find out why do you believe that crap? And I find out you believe it for no good reason. Because it isn't true and there's no good evidence of it. All right, so that's not circular reasoning. That's perfectly rational reasoning. Momentum is energy. Then reasons from that to say that experiments contradicting him are wrong. Well, I'm just saying, obviously, I have no good reason to believe momentum never fails to give a correct answer. So I don't have any reason to doubt momentum is essential and is the fundamental form of motion in the universe. I don't have any reason to doubt that. Just like I have no reason to doubt that gravity comes in units of time. I don't have any reason to doubt it because it always gets a right answer. And then uses that to conclude that momentum is energy. I'm saying it overtly. Yes, that's the argument. I don't know. And until I see 25 times the fuel being required to move something 5 times as fast, I have no reason to doubt it. The circle continues endlessly. There's no circle continuing endlessly except your lack of evidence and your lack of willing to concede you don't have it. And so that's it. That's the glaring elephant in the room, is you're saying I should believe even though you can't show me shit. Okay. Draft science has said people who refuse to look at evidence are religious cowards. Well, I don't even know when I said that, but whatever. I mean, obviously, evidence is a great thing. But his own standard, the question is simply, was he honest in processing the evidence for this? Yes, I was honest. These were shitty experiments. I mean, these stupid carts with these tiny wheels plus the silly, cheap 40-cent spring. I said it right then when he was doing the experiment. I mean, you're using the silly 40-cent spring in the cart? You can't do better than that? And the whole whacking thing? I mean, do you think that's a great idea, these carts that you have to whack them to release the spring? You think that's some sort of brilliant engineering? That's a pile of shit. All right. Did he say that the evidence put doubt in his presuppositions, or did he use... I can't have doubt because, frankly, your evidence is so marginal, and the evidence against it isn't marginal. It's glaring. 300 years and you haven't filmed anything. Nothing that even looks close to 9 times the energy to go 3 times as fast. Nothing even close. The reply is linked to and quoted above. Well, whatever. Just more crap. Draft science finally finds a reason to dismiss experiments, whatever that is. It means after about 1.5 years, oh, fuck you, finally finds a potential flaw in the elastic launcher experiments worth investigating. So what a lie. Here is another video by Draft Science discussing this here. So again, yes, perfectly reasonable videos, no doubt. All right, the argument is that when, say, a spring is launching an object forward, the spring itself does not stop moving when the object loses contact with the spring. Yes, it's a decisively clever observation. I mean, you just can't, oh shit, yeah, you got to really realize that the faster the object is moving, it means the spring is going to wobble a hell of a lot more. twice as much for twice the velocity. It's a substantial amount of more wobbling. The spring continues to extend and ends up wobbling back and forth. There you go. That energy was energy that was supposed to get into the object, and it didn't get into it. This means that when the spring launcher has potential energy U, well, fuck you in the ass with this stupid U word for potential energy, but whatever, it does not give away 100% of the energy to the launched object. Yes, it gets worse the lighter the object is the whole point. It keeps some of the energy, yes, and thus there is an inefficiency in the spring launcher. Yes, that's why you can't bounce things very long on springs. You know, it doesn't bounce very much. It bounces once and it goes bounce, 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 and stops. The whole reason it's stopping is because of this problem. Critically, the inefficiency of the spring launcher is larger than when it is launching smaller masses, as draft science explains. Right, so okay, let's hear your counter argument to that. What the fuck is he going to say? You really think he can say anything that's going to be in any way be able to touch the pure factuality of this circumstance? It's just an absolute fact. You just can't get around it. To be clear, this is a completely valid objection. Well, there you go. Okay, springs are not 100% efficient at launching objects, and the inefficiency depends on the mass of the object launched. So there you go. Okay, the inefficiency gets lower when a smaller mass is launched. No, the inefficiency gets higher. The efficiency gets lower. Okay, so he says the efficiency gets lower, which is correct. So there you go. Okay, so you're conceding, and it can be substantial. Even the critics come up with numbers close to 10%. That's a lot. However, after concluding this fact, draft science has no interest in analyzing his own objections' consistency. I don't know. Bullshit. Compare these two positions. In video A, whatever this is, a commenter presented link 5, whatever that is, and experimental evidence, whatever this is. I'm going to go back through all these links. In response, he talks about his spring efficiency argument at 550, explaining how the change in spring efficiency would be large enough to account for the outcome in the video. So whatever is wrong with that. So anyway, now the trick is the spring is still attached to my cart. To your cart? Who are you? So you're saying you're what? Brozo or Dispar or somebody? Huh? So your name wasn't that. So who the fuck is this character? Let's see. So I guess it's all these people just go under, fake names. Maxim Hart. So who the fuck are you? All right, where were we? Okay. However, inclusion of the fact. Analyzing and for the outcomes of the video. Okay, yeah. Now the trick is the spring is still attached to my cart. So, I guess it is Dispar. Was this a Dispar video? I don't know. And the real problem, as I pointed out in the spring video, the problem with springs is I can compress them the same way, and then I can launch something so they are fixed at this end brick wall. It doesn't matter what they're attached to. They're wobbling. The wobble's the problem. And I can compress them, and then I can expand them. And if I put a light thing on the spring, I'm going to be it's going to be going very fast when the light thing leaves, and so the spring still has a lot of energy and is going to do a lot of wobbling. Now, okay, but if I put a big heavy thing in front of the spring and push it, then the spring is going to be going very slow when the object leaves, so the spring is going to have very little oscillation left. Yes, this is all my point. So the spring gives more energy to the system. Yes, the heavy things get more energy. That was decisively demonstrated in the physicist Michael video. Decisively made obvious. There was more momentum in the heavier cart experiment. It releases more energy the slower, the bigger the masses it pushes. So the bigger the mass, the more energy it can give it. Yes. The lighter the mass, the less energy it can give it. Yes. So that's basically the argument in the spring video, and pretty solid, decisive, perfect, rational explanation. All right. So I don't know what this is. Okay, I don't know what that is. So I think that's my argument. But now consider video B at 5:35. He is detailing a thought experiment that he predicts will vindicate him. In the process of explaining the thought experiment, he says, what the fuck is all this crap? All right, and the fact that these springs do lose a little bit, I mean, you can't argue this a little more effectively than this. I mean, just post your links and say this is good enough evidence for you. And then I'll just make my response saying, well, it's not nearly good enough for me. All right, the fact is that springs do lose a little bit of their effectiveness. So you're saying it's a little bit. I mean, again, Falwell just admitted that it's, you know, he said 7%, but we know the 7% was based on him just cheating the measurement. So we know it was 10%. All right, their efficiency with velocity. So and then the Brozo experiment kind of demonstrates it too, right? I mean, when he had the heavy cart, he got the heavy cart got 7 bounces, and the light cart got whatever 14, some kind of numbers like that. 10 and 14, something like that. Anyway, and the fact is that the springs do lose a little bit of their effectiveness, their energy with velocity. So the faster you push something into the spring, the less of the spring's energy echo. Okay, we already did all that. But anyway, it's still nothing like 1.4. It's something like 1.8. I don't think I was arguing it was 1.4. But again, the point is, these are all examples of why, when you do these experiments where you're just comparing, you know, you're going from twice the velocity when clearly the 3 times the velocity and 9 times the force, that one's going to be a lot easier to understand that the spring's not going to matter as much. You know, so it's better to do the higher number experiment than these marginal ones where you're cheating on these numbers, because we know we got that's the way they all come out. They all come out kind of fudgy. There was lots of 1.6s produced in the Brozo experiments, if you remember correctly. All right, when the argument suits him one way, he says spring efficiency must be large. When the argument suits him the other way, he says spring efficiency must be small and unremarkable. That's just lying. He does absolutely no principled analysis or calculation. Well, there is no principled analysis. That's the whole argument. Where in the annals of physics is there anybody else who even brought up the subject, you fucking piece of shit? Did somebody else ever bring up the subject besides me? Has anybody on the internet ever mentioned how it's kind of queer how physics companies, science companies, produce these low friction carts with little tiny wheels? How come nobody's noticed that that's not a brilliant idea? That you're going to store more motion in the tiny wheels, more momentum in the wheels. He simply asserts whether or not the spring efficiency is a big deal based on, well, so fuck you, that's just a lie. Moreover, he provides absolutely no basis to cite the 1.8 figure whatsoever. Well, I'm not going to argue, and I'm just saying that all these experiments were never perfect. So again, you're going to argue that somewhere they were. I'm just going to argue, not really. All right. It is completely ad hoc and unprincipled, just like the 1.4, his 1.4 figure. I don't know what that even means. The 1.4 figure is your game, jackass. So obviously Brozo didn't get the 1.4 figure, okay, when he made a lever launcher. Why? Because the waste in the spring was eliminated as a variable, because the lever moves exactly the same speed in both experiments. And that's the ideal circumstance. That's why the lever launcher is the better experiment, because it gets rid of this defect regarding springs. All right, we will analyze draft science objection by adopting his model in which E equals mv. Oh, Jesus Christ. F equals mv P equals mv, heat equals mv. It's all mv, jackass. Suppose a spring launcher starts with stored energy, so whatever that means, U, and the spring has mass m. Well, we're just wasting time with the mass of the spring. The torque in the spring is all that matters. It doesn't matter how heavy the spring is, right? I can use a really heavy spring and put 9 pounds on it, or I can put a light spring and put 9 pounds on it. It has 9 pounds of force in it. It doesn't matter how heavy the spring is. When the spring launches an object of mass m, the contact between the spring and the object is lost when the spring end achieves its maximum velocity, v. At the moment the object loses contact with the spring, yes, it's going its maximum velocity. So let's just understand. The spring, when it loses contact, is going one tiny bit below its maximum velocity. Okay, both move at the same velocity. Well, they really don't. The spring tip cannot move faster than the object is pushing, or else contact would not have been lost. That velocity of the spring and velocity of the spring end corresponds to some energy being part of the spring instead of having all its energy transferred to the object. Well, it's just an absolute fact that it's still pushing, because now it's expanding the coils of the spring, so it's doing work now on the spring. All right, now even though the entire spring is not moving, so what part is that? Where is that? Fuck that. Where did that happen? Now, even though the entire spring is not moving, well, yeah, one end isn't moving. We know the energy that the spring can have at that time is bounded above by mv. I don't know what that is. Where v is the maximum velocity of the spring end. So again, I pointed out that the spring is a mass moving. So, especially when you let the spring get launched, well, that's real momentum. Now you're moving the spring when the spring's not even attached. So Gosling did a whole bunch, Falwell did a whole bunch of experiments where he bounced things on springs and the springs are flying up in the air. I mean, obviously that's a lot of wasted energy when you're moving the actual spring. But the point is that obviously the thing that's in the spring is torque, pressure. And I don't think the pressure between a heavy spring and a light spring can be different. They're really moving the same speed when they launch the object, right? If it's 9 pounds and I use a heavy spring, and it's 9 pounds and I use a light spring, I'm going to get the same velocity out of the spring. So we know the stored energy you're losing doesn't have anything to do with the mass of the spring. It has to do with the torque in the spring. But ignore all those arguments, of course. To give draft science the best possible chance his argument's working out, suppose the amount of energy in that spring is mv. This is the upper bound, but let's suppose it keeps all of it. Then upon launch, the energy partitions as U equals E spring plus E object. Well, so what is all this? Again, whatever. Let the efficiency of the ratio of the energy delivered to the object to be the initial stored energy, whatever this means, can now find the formula for the efficiency in terms of the mass ratio. So again, you just keep telling me the only thing that affects the spring is how heavy it is. So if I use an incredibly light spring, that somehow this problem won't exist. And obviously my argument to that is bullshit. All of this is working within draft science model, so you're just lying. And giving him the maximum charity by assuming the spring keeps the maximum possible energy upon release, whatever that would be. I don't know what the maximum possible energy is. In reality, the spring will keep less than mv energy because it's not the case that the entire spring itself is moving. So again, you keep talking about the movement of the spring and it's the movement of the coils, but whatever. There are models that take this into account, but this is beside the point of this thread. I'd love to see these models. So where are these models that take anything into account about springs? Given a spring mass something, m, initially strong energy, whatever that is, storing energy. Okay, initially storing energy, u. We may use the knowledge to predict precisely what the velocity of the object mass should be launched when the inefficiencies are taking into account. So how can you take into account the inefficiencies? So again, he's just claiming that the only thing the spring has is mass, and a velocity. So if the spring is, very light compared to the object you're pushing or something, I don't know what his argument is, but obviously it just has to do with the force, and you can't change how much force the spring is producing. So a light spring will produce the same velocity in the object that a heavy spring is. We know springs are reliable in that sense, so I could make a scale that measures pounds with a big heavy spring or a light spring. I can use any spring. Now let's consider the situation in which the spring launcher with pushes an object to mass and blah blah blah, and the core blah 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 would be launched. So again, this is just all gibberish. Has nothing to do with a real experiment anywhere. All right, draft science claims spring efficiency accounts for the results, and thus the outcome does not disprove draft science model of energy. But now we run into the problem: if the spring has efficiency blah 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 when pushing A, blah 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 when pushing B, this is in this non-ideal case. So whatever this crap is, there's no way to make anything out of this. And the conclusion is that PB, whatever that is, must smaller than PA by a factor of 0.71. So that's what he says. About a 30% reduction in efficiency. The spring mass could possibly allow for such a dramatic reduction in efficiency. Well, going back into the relationship between the launcher efficiency and the masses, we find, so again, he's just making up this shit, that he knows how inefficient the springs are. Amazing, but whatever. Giving us m equals 1, 338.38. So, in other words, in order to have a 30% reduction in spring launcher efficiency so that evidence contradicting draft science is explained away, the spring must be 38% larger than the one mass object it is launching. So again, he's just doing a strictly mass of the spring argument, and that's not the complete argument. So fuck you. And I've made that clear for weeks now. I have recognized that you need to recognize that it's the torque in the spring, not just the mass of the spring. This means that in all the videos linked, the spring must weigh heavier than the lighter. Okay, so he's saying that somehow the spring fact only happens with heavy springs. And so he has no evidence of that. So he has no evidence that light springs evade this problem. In none of the videos do the springs come out to being anywhere close to as heavy as, right, and so this is just a straw man. So there's no argument the springs are heavy and that it's the mass of the spring that's consuming all the energy. The argument clearly is that it's the force in the spring that is captured and can't get out. It can't escape to the object because the spring loses contact with the object. So it's a real fact. The fact is, science has never studied it, and they never did the experiments. So you haven't done the experiments, so nobody knows what these numbers really are. In order for the efficiency argument to work out, I mean, the real problem is you think the loss of energy proves kinetic energy, and that's the joke here. Is they're saying they conserve the kinetic energy because they destroyed all of the light object's motion. So by using small wheels and shitty springs, you're basically saying, I'm going to so badly push the light object. That is, half the energy is going to be in its wheels, and the other half is going to be in the wobbling spring. And so I'm going to make it look like I conserve the momentum. I'm going to make it look like I can only make the light car go 1.4. Because I'm going to put a whole bunch of energy in the wheelbase, and I'm going to leave a whole bunch of energy in the spring wobbling. So that's the only way they get their 1.4. Okay. There would be huge consequences, like the fact that all springs used must be about as massive as the object. So again, this is just a lie. So we know that's not the argument I've been making. Okay. Now, when I initially stated the argument, I didn't talk about anything more than, the spring is a mass, it's moving. You have to account for that. But again, we know logically you can understand the torque of the spring is not mass dependent. Small springs can produce just as much torque as a large heavy spring. For some further analysis, I want to return to Stephen Bro's link. So link 2 video, because he also explicitly checks friction and shows repeated spring bounces trials with a 2 kilogram, 4 kilogram. Right, exactly. And I don't see any notion that this proves a damn thing. except that springs do lose energy. And the original video here, it gives us a way to experimentally test draft science claim about spring efficiencies. All right, so in this case, the linear motion of the carts is a small percentage of the cart's motion because he's using metal wheels. So even though they're large metal wheels, which is good, they're really heavy, and they have a bearing that's really heavy. So we're talking about moving bearings and a metal disc. All right, so there's a lot of linear motion that has been converted into the motion of the wheels. All right, it gives us a way to experimentally test blah, blah, blah. Okay, to review, draft science needs the lighter mass to receive a substantial smaller fraction of the spring's stored energy. Well, it was a pretty small, considering it only bounced, 30% more? Okay, which we take as E equals mv, blah, 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 so one of this waste of time. Let's give draft science maximum clarity, assume charity, extremely heavy spring weight. So he's doing the same thing with the spring weight, so okay, I'm not going to bother. We've already been here and done the spring weight. Okay, I independently, so this is interesting, measured the speed ratio ongoing and incoming for the left spring by frame counting over a fixed on-screen distance. Oh, well, that's quite interesting. 3 early left bounces per run. My measurements showed that on average there was a reduction by a factor of 0.91 for both the 2 kilogram and the 4 kilo with each bounce. So he's saying it's only 1%, yet that's not logically possible because we know it stops bouncing. So we know the average has to be somewhere around, especially for the heavy cart, it's greater than 10% because it bounced less than 10 times. Duh. Okay. This procedure does not isolate spring-only efficiency. It folds together spring losses plus rollback losses plus any impact misalignment losses. So I don't even understand how you can get away with saying something like that. That there was a reduction of 1%, less than 1%. Bull fucking shit. All right. Maybe it means that's 0.9. Let's see. So 1% would be 10%. Oh, okay. Maybe that's what he means. I don't know. It's a little fudgy. 0.91. So do you mean 9%? Well, if you mean 9%, that's significant. What matters is draft size argument is the mass independent of the speed reduction factor upon bounce should go from F to a factor of 0.7 F when switching from 4 kilogram. However, in both cases we say F equals 0.91. Well, whatever. I don't agree with whatever your 0.91 is. Bullshit. So obviously the heavier cart was the cart that bounced fewer times. So the light cart bounced 15, the heavy cart bounced 10, so clearly a disproportion. All right, the main point is glaring. When the 2 kilogram cart bounces off the left spring, it does not show a 30%. So who said 30%? In the speed like the required draft science model to survive. There's no 30% requirement to get an outcome of 10 and 15. This removes the only quantitative room draft science spring inefficiency argument needs. Oh, fuck you. I mean, fuck you. Okay, so look, that experiment disproves it all anyway. I encourage everyone to do the measurements yourselves to confirm this. I would tell you that would be a preposterous waste of time. These are terribly unclinical experiments. They aren't even the same spring he's using, so we don't even know if the springs are identical in any real sense. Whether one of them has been squished too hard and might be a piece of shit by now. We don't even know how much he compressed the spring before he even launched the stupid things. This concludes the demonstration of experiments whose outcome perfectly matched the predictions of kinetic energy. And this one perfectly matches my predictions. So go ahead and debunk it. And rule out draft science proposal that energy equals whatever unsigned scalar momentum. There's no such thing as unsigned, whatever the fuck that is, in scalar. So fuck you in the ass till thoroughly dead. I never used any of those words. We have also addressed and debunked draft science argument that springs inefficiency can account for the experimental outcomes. Well, you certainly haven't debunked it in any way, and you don't have any fucking real evidence, so you're just talking shit, fucker. Because that's all you got is shit talking. You won't even concede that, oh, these are all things science should study. It should study these variables. It shouldn't be something we don't know exactly how inefficient the springs are and exactly what makes them inefficient. At what speeds do they become more and more inefficient? I mean, obviously you could argue that some stiff springs have a very high tolerance because they can go very fast, but loose, sloppy springs can only move very slow, so they're gonna run out of gas a lot sooner than the stiffer spring. But the stiffer spring stores less total energy, you could argue. Well, it has to store the same amount. It's 10 pounds or whatever the pressure is. I don't think there's any way it can store less than that. So yeah, that can't matter. But the distance over which it's stored is tiny. That's the difference. And I don't know whether that would make a difference. Hard to say. I mean, it seems obvious that the looser the spring, the more lossy it's going to be because it's going to have a lot of coils moving. And the stiffer the spring, there's less stuff moving, so it's less lossy, you would think. But who knows? Alright, well, that was tedious and unpleasant. But we'll see if there's anything else. Let's see if there's anybody here. 7. Okay, well, it's not terrible, but nobody has anything to say, so that's always discouraging. But let me see what else I can find here. If there's anything else. I want this. Alright, we'll see if there's any more stuff on their board. Alright, so nothing there. Okay, lever launcher experiments. Okay, good. Alright, now test see mine. I thought that was mine. Weird. Somebody clicked the wrong button somewhere. But it was you, Gary. You think? Yeah, it might be. Alright, so nothing. No reply to the thin ice argument. So it's pretty clear to me that the thin ice argument, you know, the idea that you go across a surface and the fact is you don't have a constant weight. And it's just a fact. Your weight isn't constant. Because gravity needs time to give you weight. And that's a real concept. Alright. So, I guess that's it. And such. I guess I could check my YouTube channel. Yeah, there's probably no point. Alright. So maybe I'll just call this a video and get the hell out of here. And such. So yeah, so tomorrow will be this simple argument of the, you know, in space, you hit something, you hit it with 2 things, you're going to go twice as fast. You hit it with 3 things, you're going to go 3 times as fast. So it's all over for any idea that it takes 9 times the energy to go 3 times as fast. It only takes 3 units of force to go 3 times as fast. Alright, so till the next time and such and so forth and whatnot. Yeah, that's enough. Well, 2 hours.